Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to buying an RGB gamer chair to make you go zoom, only to then drop your old chair on your foot and severely cripple your foot, and now I'm stuck in a chair because I injured myself. Otherwise known as the Warframe Guide. Now, other than me being sat in a chair like a lazy bum, this video is going to be all about something different, and I think it goes under this notion when we look at this. When playing Warframe, I'm sure you've been accosted with the age-old adage of, what is the best? And to that question, I've always advocated for the idea that every weapon is viable, and every weapon, it can be good if modded correctly. Why? Well, let's remember that Warframe is an incredibly casual game. There is no end game realistically, and I would say around 90% of the player base will never fight an enemy above level 300. This comes down to a couple of different reasons, ranging from the game's lack of encouragement to do anything above that baseline level, due to just how poorly the rewards scale and how itemization and gearing works. And gear also has no relevancy beyond what the Foundation missions offer. And on top of that, DE actively ban you if you spend too long in a mission. I kid you not. Thanks, DE. Really appreciate that. Ranting at bad business practices aside, with all this in mind, we need to remember that we shouldn't make decisions in Warframe based on what is quote-unquote the best. Of course, there are weapons that are optimal, that take less effort and get more potency out of with less effort. But if you play nothing but the all-star weapons, then you end up missing out on weapon types and playstyles that could offer that extra bit of dynamicism in your daily gameplay to really excite your taste buds with, whet your appetite, so to say, and just generally make things all the more enjoyable with diversity. So, in today's video, and going along that mantra, this video is to encourage the mantra of personal enjoyment. We are going to be looking at 10 weapons that I personally feel are incredibly underrated, looking at their general stat weights, what makes them fun, and just how far you can push them, and realizing that with that notion in mind, there are weapons out there that are, of course, stronger than what they may seem on surface value, and that you don't have to go with what's meta to have fun in this game. Remember though, this is of course all my personal opinion, and if the Warframe community have taught me anything, it's that tier lists and top 10 videos incite more controversy and toxicity than trying to sue your own country for electoral fraud. Point being, let's remember this is all for the fun of it. So let's not get angry over our choices, shall we? Starting this list off, we're going to start with a weapon that I personally really enjoy, the Hystrix, Korra's signature sidearm. Why signature? Because it inflicts all kinds of goo-goo pain. And my god, don't we just love it. Now, from the outside, a lot of newer players might be put off using this secondary sidearm. But what if I told you that this weapon has a level of power that allows you to excel to the highest level of elemental damage, so that you deal over 9 million. No, I'm joking. It's a good weapon, though. At its base value, the Hystrix, with its magazine of 60 needles, will not only inflict varying amounts of base damage, but also come with an adjustable status type, where by pressing your Alt-Fire button, you can swap between your needles, inflicting fire, toxin, cold, and electric damage, each of which having an additional amount of status chance to inflict on damage. Kind of like those multicolored pens you ended up using in school. Oh, the good old days. This then being its biggest benefit, but also why I feel it's moderately underrated. Having the ability to have an adjustable base element with high status chance allows the Hystrix to not only adjust to different enemy types on the fly, but it also means you can use this hedgehog of a weapon as a primer for your other elements to lead into higher damage types and synergies. Not to mention, because of its decent crit chance and crit modifier by baseline, you can even go into hybrid builds to excel the damage even further. The second weapon on this list is the Hardpack. The Hardpack is probably one of those weapons that you saw the blueprint for and went, "Arr, avast ye mateys! Fire the harpoons! Repel the invaders!" And although this weapon would do well for anyone trying to cosplay Davy Jones or the 5 Hydroid mains that exist out there in the world of Warframe, Hardpack is actually a bit of a diamond in the rough. By its base stats alone, the Hardpack isn't anything tremendous to look at, or anything interesting for that matter. Sporting a meager 2.3 crit modifier with 20% crit chance, and a rather measly 17% status chance, this generally means it doesn't really do good at anything from its stats alone. And from a slightly elevated base damage, I suppose, being its only leading good part about its damage. But there are a few things that can make this weapon suddenly turn into one of the funner primaries out there. Not only does the weapon deal an insane amount of puncture damage, but it also has a fun alt fire, which fires a chain harpoon, which can knock enemies down and deals heightened damage over the original burst fire mode. And to top it all off, it's a disposition 5 weapon, meaning that your Rivens will get max amount of benefit on this weapon. So if you do get a Riven for Mr. Spiky over here, all of a sudden enemies will go from saying ow, stop it, to oh god, what's this pain penetrating my soul? The Kurudo is one of the more funner weapons I think I've ever used. Not necessarily because of how hard it hits, because realistically it doesn't really hit that hard, but just because I feel as though all fist weapons are generally very underappreciated due to their small range, due to, well, being that they're basically glorified knuckle dusters. But out of all of the fist weapons, the Kurudo does weigh in at probably one of the more potent fist weapons out there, with 31% crit chance, 2.5% crit modifier, and a 9% status chance, which kind of means that it is most certainly more of a crit weapon. And the most off-putting part about it is that it's obtained from those stupid thumpers on Plains of Eidolon. But it does mean it's relatively easy to farm for once you understand and get the kill method down on those metal beasties, as you can just go out there and farm them infinitely until you get your blueprint. But what makes this weapon so fun is the same reason all weapons are fun. It's not the damage you deal, it's how you deal the damage. If you ever want to feel like that one scene from The Matrix where they're fighting with their fists, no, wait, that's the whole movie. Well, either way, if you want to feel like a badass, there's nothing better than beating down enemies with a flurry of punches to then end your fight with a good old satisfying heavy attack, which involves a big old boot to the face. So more for style than damage, but the reason I choose the Kurudo is because a good build with this thing also makes it hit like a truck as well. If you plan on using a stance with this, I'd recommend Grim Fury, just for the sake of streamlining your flow of attacks so you're not jumping around all over the place. At that point, slapping on as much crit as possible with things like Blood Rush, Organ Shatter, and anything crit related will make this weapon hit like a goddamn mother trucker. Number 4, the Ocucor. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. The Ocucor was introduced as one of the signature weapons of Fortuna, and has been mostly forgotten about in my eyes. But with that being said, let me tell you why I think you should give this weapon another try if you haven't already. The beam for this weapon is essentially how it gets all its power. The initial beam will lock onto an enemy and basically hold on to that enemy until it dies. When an enemy dies afflicted by the Ocucor, it will cause the Ocucor to generate an additional beam, allowing it to deal even more damage over time. This essentially allows you to plow into a large group of enemies, target one enemy down, and build up damage as you blow them away. This in of itself means aiming is relatively easy, and the scalability then comes in quite tremendously as well. This makes it amazing for low-level missions, but also allows some scalability if you want to ramp it up into the higher levels as well. The only real problem with this weapon is its magazine size, so it might be worth modding for a little bit of extra magazine size if you can, or look for a Riven with said attribute. Because the longer you can shoot for, the more damage you're going to do, because the more likely you're going to kill an enemy to help build up the damage in the beams. It's a simple, fun weapon, and no matter which way you mod it, you'll have a lovely sidearm to melt away the opposing idiots that decided to get in your way that day. Number 5 is the Stug! Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, the Stug is actually one of the best... I'm sorry, I can't do this. No one likes or wants the Stug at all. The actual number 5 on this spot goes to the Latron, and all its Prime and Wraith variants. The reason being is that because although this weapon is not really the most powerful, it is probably one of the most accessible. And being the fact that it's so easily obtainable, seeing the fact as though it has a 0 master rank requirement, this allows you to pick it up from the word go the second you start the game, and it allows you to make mistakes. It allows you to practice your builds whilst having a fun-looking rifle to blap away at enemies. And even with its base version, it offers versatility and room to make the mistakes you need to make to learn the process of modding. You can then carry that over to the future weapons you decide to go for. And with the fact that it has so little in terms of build requirements, in terms of resources, it truly is a new player's best friend. But see the Latron as an extension into other things, a learning weapon to ease yourself into the game, something that can translate into either taking what you learnt to other weapons to excel yourself with new weapons, or if you like the way it plays, because it is a rather fun weapon to shoot, its Prime and Wraith variant are infinitely stronger than the base version. So you get to have a weapon that's a lot stronger, something to aim for, whilst having a rifle with a style that really feels very satisfying to play. Number 6, the Hema. I can't seem to do a single video without yelling something, can I? Anyway, other than being a hentai-induced nightmare, and also being the worst item to ever research in your clan dojo ever, if you've had to research this, you'll know exactly what I mean there. This tentacle boy is actually a rather interesting gun to use, clocking in with 11% crit chance, a 2.0 crit modifier, and 25% status chance, and a baseline of viral damage. You fire a burst of pustules that will inflict significant damage to the enemy. What with the baseline viral damage you have a setup for a weapon that in close quarters will be incredibly potent at racking up kills. Honestly, there's not much to be said about the Hema. It does good. It's a nice gun. It's just a pain in the ass to get. Its main off-putting element in terms of how it plays, other than how it looks, is that nobody really likes a slow-firing status weapon. But inhibitions aside, with a good build, you can have a weapon that will not only scare Japanese schoolgirls, but also easily knock away enemies and act as a pseudo status primer for your other damages and synergies. Number 7 on this list is the Fang. And yes, I know what you're saying, but Makari, the Fang's terrible. And yes, if you'd have said that a year ago before the melee and status rework, I'd probably have agreed with you. But since the rework, although its overall stats haven't changed, its abilities and scalability have, due to the systemic nature of how melee works now, to a point where it is now capable of dealing insane amounts of damage, and you'll see what I mean via the footage we have in the background. Now, rather than going into detail about numbers and everything, all I'm going to say is, I want you to go away, test this build out, and come back and tell me that Fang Prime isn't a strong weapon. With all the changes to damage and everything else along the way, a lot of our long-standing skepticisms of weapons that used to be terrible or at least suboptimal are now usually wrong. Mostly due to DE's evolving mentality to generalizing every weapon to be at least moderately competent. And this is something we can at least be grateful for, because it means no matter what weapon we choose in this game, and that's kind of the purpose of this video, is to show all this, no matter what weapon we choose, we're gonna be able to have a weapon that at least deals enough damage to be relevant for most relevant content, whilst being able to have the freedom to choose what and how you want to play. Number 8 is the Arca Titron. Up until recently, the Arca Titron was at one point the highest base damage melee weapon in the game. I bet you didn't know that. And although it still boasts a huge amount of damage, it's the passive and general ease of build that allows this weapon to become the Slayer of Corpus, the Bane of Grenier, and the thing that Infested have nightmares about. In essence, the reason why I have this on the list is not necessarily because it's powerful, not necessarily because it's fun to play, but it's got a very interesting passive, and I think people should honestly give this a try. Every time you kill an enemy with this weapon, you build a stack. And at any point, you can use your heavy attack to release this stack in a burst of damage that will resonate out into the enemies near you. At max stacks, which is 10, and with your combo counter included, you can build up to a point of damage which is unbelievable. That would even make One Punch Man get a little bit envious. Another weapon that has no build semantic or anything unique stat-wise, but one that stylistically just has a huge amount of fun behind it. Number 9 is the Cyanex. I'm pretty sure that's how you say that. Another of those weapons that came out and the universe just kind of forgot about it instantly. Coming in as a nifty sidearm with 8% crit chance, a 1.4% measly crit modifier, but having 32% status chance as a baseline. It also additionally has a baseline amount of gas damage, which allows you to set up some rather interesting setups of damage. It's a weapon that has not seen as much use as I think it honestly deserves, and I'm going to explain why. I believe that this is mostly contributed from the fact of its tiny magazine size. But what's a tiny magazine size between friends and mass genocide? This weapon's bullets by default all have a homing beacon, meaning even if your accuracy is as bad as mine, you will actually still be able to hit something, inflicting huge amounts of status due to the high base status effect, and creating pools of gas damage that you can use to choke off little areas. And just for the sheer convenience, makes this a very fun weapon to use, because you can basically fling yourself around, fire bullets, and you're probably going to hit at least something. To compound the use of this weapon even further, this weapon also then has a rather amazing alt fire, which allows you to, and I quote, blow your load instantly, releasing every remaining bullet in the magazine, just without the homing tendency. So if there's a big old Nox or a big old enemy that takes a bit more to kill, that's shouting out obscenities of pornography starring your mother, you can run up to them, say to their face, "Oi, mate," and release 11 gas-infused bullets right into their nostrils. I'm sure they won't be laughing about pornography starring your mother after that. Now, the final weapon on this list. What could it be, you ask? Would it be something amazing? Will it be something completely unheard of? Will it be something that will change the scope and shape of Warframe forever? No, because my final choice for this list is the Scanner. Now, why do I think the Scanner is underappreciated? Well, it's very easy to see that when you first pick up the game, you have a choice of either the Scanner or the bow. And usually, because of the general consistency of progressing through the game, most people will abandon the Scanner, because the mentality being is that because it's the first weapon you get in the game, naturally that makes it terrible due to scalability and how you progress through things. But the Scanner, although by default stats is generally pretty lacking, it is a fun weapon. It is a well-rounded weapon. Much like how I treated the Latron as a primary weapon, the Scanner allows you to make mistakes without being punished for it. It's like a substitute teacher that doesn't know you're an absolute cock in class, and will still let you get away with being a cock just without the detention. But the Scanner, by its default standings, allows you to have a fast weapon, one that doesn't necessarily need a stance mod, one that can have any amount of mods on it and still perform well. See the Scanner as a staging weapon, a weapon that allows you to understand truly that at no given time is there ever something that is the best. I have personally used the Scanner to kill level 200 enemies, and that was even without a Riven. Yes, it's never going to be super mega absolute meta game optimal, but at the end of the day, does that really matter? The entire point of this video is to show you that at any given time, you can use whatever weapon you want. And the Scanner is a sword. It has a sharp edge. It looks swish. It has skins. And simplicity of modding means you can basically do whatever you so wish with it, and it'll do you justice. So remember, no matter what weapon you use, always play for the style. Unless you do fancy being that 0.1% of the player base that is trying to be super mega optimal and try and get banned by the developers for doing something that's just part of the game. Sorry, going off on a tangent. And that's the video, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard me talk about it through this video, and I will attest to it again. Remember, preference is key. Warframe is an incredibly casual but incredibly fun game, and you should always play with what you find enjoyable. In the comments down below, I would love to know the weapon that you think is truly underrated that more people should try out. Maybe that way people will find weapons that they have not had the chance to play with as of yet. If you want to come and join our fellow Tenno here who joined me for the making of this video, please drop by our Twitch. We stream pretty much daily, and most of these videos are recorded on there. Additionally, make sure you follow my Twitter for daily updates and any art that I draw that's at least moderately publicly acceptable. And hopefully I will see all of you top hatters in the next video. And hopefully next video I'll be able to stand up and my foot won't be broken. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Ta-ra!